Are 4 and or actually we have a little bit of a mismatch here. 4 and 5 on the side of Connor Mullaly playing against May French, who is 5 and 4. These players may have different records, but they have very similar deck lists. This is a Demir mid-range mirror match. I took a look at the deck list. Will, there's only a 2 card difference. So Connor has a 4th Go for the Throat and a Shielder the Apocalypse, where May has 1 Anoint with Affliction and 1 Fey Bloom Trick. Other than that, these lists are completely identical.
Is there anything else that can break this mirror a little bit? Is it a play draw dependent, or is it normally just we're going to get into the late game, see who can get the most 2-for-1s?
Play draw certainly has a part of it, especially when you factor in a card like Kite of Bane of Nightmares, which these players are sporting 4 copies of each.
Ooh.
And that card on the play when you have it, turn 3, attack with a creature, Kaido pickup. It is very difficult to beat that. But there's just going to be a lot of jockeying for position in this type of matchup where both players want to make sure they control the battlefield, and does not, basically neither player wants to get kitoed, so they're going to try everything they can to make sure that does not happen. So Connor with 2 mana up, representing maybe something like a Floodpit Strider to tap down the Mockingbird. And what's interesting for May, you'll notice that she played the Mockingbird on turn 1. Not the most, maybe not the most common play to see here, but that is because she was setting up for a potential Kaido.
Yeah, so I think it was turn 2. I think she was holding up that cut down in case any shenanigans was happening. But as you said, both players now jockeying for position. Connor's just land, go, maybe 2 mana up. Maybe we've got something end of turn. I think we've got count. Well, it's not counter spell, but a way to counter in the grip. But we're having just to untap. Connor playing for his life, as you said. 6 lost, it will be out.
Very, very cheeky play there from May. She actually had Floodpit Drowner and Fairy Mastermind with, you'll notice she had 2 mana up last turn, chose not to play either of those because she doesn't want to play into the counter magic from Connor, and she maybe wants to hold up a counter spell of her own, because maybe if she plays a creature, then say Connor, or if she plays a creature, Connor can then, play his own creature, resolve a creature there, and she wants to make sure she holds up the counter spell. And with 4 mana available, can also do something like tap down the Fairy Mastermind with Floodpit Drowner and still hold up that counter spell if Connor goes for a 4 mana Kaido.
What do you reckon? I'm going to take Kaido out of this equation, but what's the other sort of MVP cards in this matchup? What are the big ones that both players are trying to dig and find?
Other than Kaido, I mean, it's really a lot of these cards will just end up sort of trading, like the creatures, Mastermind trade for Mastermind, or maybe Mastermind trade for a kill spell, things like that. The big heavy hitters, there's 4 Kaidos and 4 Enduring Curiosity. Curiosity is a little bit of an awkward though one, because you'll see Connor has that Fairy Mastermind in place. So maybe if May were to go for something like a Curiosity to draw an extra card, Connor would also get the card off of the Mastermind as well. So Curiosity is good, but it does line up kind of awkwardly against the opposing Fairy Masterminds.
The main thing I'm taking away from this is we need to get comfy, because this is not going to be a quick game at all.
Yes, this is going to be a long one. Honestly, I think a big part of this matchup too is the creature lands, right? Restless Reef, Fountain Port, Soulstone Sanctuary, things of that nature, because both decks are so good at trading 1-for-1, where you have enough cut downs and go for the throws to trade for opposing creatures. And if all of that ends up happening, the game goes a little bit longer. Then it gets kind of okay. Well, who has more creature lands? Right now, Connor has 2 Sanctuaries. May only has 1 Reef. The other thing I wanted to point out is the mana base. There is a slight difference in the mana base. Connor has an extra Fountain Port, where May has an extra Soulstone Sanctuary. And I think I'd rather be the one who has the Fountain Port, because that one, being able to provide an endless stream of attackers, does seem like it definitely makes this matchup a little bit more difficult.
End of turn here, we're going to see May flash in this Fairy Mastermind. We know how good this can be in this matchup. Going to get in there for 2 points of damage. Invitational card, of course. If you had an invitational card, what color would you want it to be?
Invitational card, huh? You're putting me on the spot here. Maybe red?
Red? I would associate red with you. I think I'd probably be greedy and try and go for like a
I don't know. I
two-card
don't know
one.
if that's a compliment or not. I can't tell.
No, that's a compliment. Yeah, I feel like you're a very good, accomplished aggro player. You like turn things sideways. I think red's your color.
Okay.
Chat, tell me if I'm wrong.
We do have a question here for chat. So it is a little bit awkward where players, yes, they do need to, players who get to 8 wins are automatically qualified for top 8. And if Connor wins the next 3 rounds, he will only be at 7 wins. But remember, we won't necessarily have 8 people that get to 8 wins. So after that, it comes down to tiebreakers.
With the thing that is guaranteed is we've got a lot of magic until that point. We'll keep you updated every round with, of course, the standings and what's on the line for every player that's going to be in our feature match. This instance, though, Connor is playing for his life. If he loses this game, will be out of this tournament. May does have one loss to give to still be in a chance of fighting to get into the top 8. Only 24 players, so even with these records, everything is live. I think Connor's stepping away from the table a little bit. Going to ask a judge a question. Any idea what that question could be in this instance? Or in fact, let's just talk about May. Let's talk about May. Let's just go for it. Break this down for me.
Yeah, so Mae French is 11 main events played. Her best finish was first place. She did take down one of our events here. Number 1 top 8. Indianapolis is her hometown. She got some pretty lofty non-NRG series magic accomplishments. 6 RCQ wins. Made day 2 of an SCG event and 10 FNM top 8s. My goodness.
Flex. What flex?
What an absolute flex.
It looks like we've finished. Now there's a counter on it. I think that's the only thing I've seen changed, and Kaito is now on top of the deck.
Okay, that was
not.
Than the
what
map.
a lie.
That was
what
a map.
lie. From the map token. Got you right.
Yep. So I'm not curious. I'm curious as to what the judge question was about. Looking at the battlefield and looking at Connor's hand, I assume it was something regarding Tishana's Tidebinder. Maybe it was something along the lines of, is ninjutsu an activated ability? And to the best of my knowledge, I believe it is. So I think the way that would work is if May goes attack with Mastermind, declare ninjutsu to Jack can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that ninjutsu is activated ability, pay the mana, return the creature. That's part of the cost. So that would happen, and then you could Tidebinder the ninjutsu, and that would mean that May would keep the creature in hand and the Kaito in hand.
Well, how about 3 masterminds? May go into the skies here, 6 points of damage. I guarantee you kind of does not want to be drawing any extra cards here at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is just sort of the classic, like, both players have some creatures, but May has a bunch of flyers and Connor has a bunch of ground creatures. And this is just kind of turning into a pure good old fashioned race. Connor has 7 power in play. May's at 15. If Connor has an untapped land, can maybe go to fire up the other sanctuary. But then remember, May has that Restless Reef, which can take care of, can profitably block the Tidebinder and the Soulstone Sanctuary.
Ooh.
Like Connor picked up a Kaito.
Yeah. Also Mockingbird in hand as well if we do want to try and get ourselves a flying blocker. How would you navigate this? This is like it feels like a really complicated turn. Like this might be the turn that decides this match. Maybe it's 2 Kaitos in hand, which makes sense why we put the 3rd copy into the graveyard.
Yeah, so there's a Mockingbird here for 0. I wonder if this is going to copy the Soulstone Sanctuary. So I've done this with Mutavault before. I'm pretty sure that if you copy a Soulstone, it enters the battlefield as a land, but it would enter as basically a copy of Soulstone that wasn't animated.
So May, in response, is going to pay 4, use the ability on Fairy Mastermind. Both players are going to get to draw an extra card, but because Connor draws that extra card,
May draws 3.
May's going to get an extra 3. Nice little Ancestral there. And then we're going to use Cut Down on the Mockingbird. That's a great turn there for May.
So I wonder what the Mockingbird was copying then. Anyways. Not sure. So yeah, May's going to come in with these 6 damage in the air, and Connor doesn't really have any sort of way to get lethal. We can animate the Soulstone end of turn. Connor has 10, even with a kill spell. That's not quite enough. And I think May still has a Flood Pit Surrounder and a Cut Down in hand too.
Yeah,
2 Flood Pits.
Yeah. I think May's going to have the resources. That turn there, being able to draw 4 cards in your opponent's turn and then untap with all these flies. Maybe just doing a little bit of math. It's like, yeah, we got this, I've got this. Do I need to do anything now while you're tapped out to make sure it resolves? Says no, passes the turn over in upkeep, tap it down. Connor says, yep, you've got me. We're going to go to a game number 2, which means we get to look at both of these players' sideboards for all you beautiful people at home tuning in here to the NRG series. So let's start over on Connor's side and see what the 75 looks like. Because, of course, this is an open deckless tournament. Both players get to do this as well as me and you do.
Yeah, these deck lists, I will say they're going to look pretty similar. So it looks like this is Connor. So Connor is working with 3 negates, 3 preachers, 2 anoints, 2 Gix's commands, 2 Shielded the Apocalypse, a blot out, a Disdainful Stroke, and a Tishana's Tidebinder. Now, when it comes to the Demir mirror match, I think one of the more important things is just mana efficiency. You want to make sure that your cards line up well against your opponents, that you're making efficient trades. Not exactly sure where you want to go in terms of cutting cards. I could see the Tidebinders. 3 mana, there's not a ton of things that it hits. I guess it can hit Kaido, but that lineup is a little bit more awkward on the draw. Connor maybe wants to go towards something like Anoint with Affliction to have more cheap removal spells. You could maybe go towards something like, it's weird, like Gix's Command and Shieldred seem like they're appealing, but they also don't line up super well against the counter spells. So, man, and then at that point, there's only 2 spell stutters. So it's, a lot of options here. I think the Anoints are pretty good. Past that, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe Preacher on the play, but potentially not in the draw.
I was thinking Preacher because it's not like a card that you would assume that your opponent would bring in. Maybe this is a way of us to be able to kind of like win that mind game war that we're saying, because it is open deck list. Maybe May wouldn't be expecting Preacher come in, and it does dodge removal like cut down. So we'll see how it goes. Let's have a little look at May's side, see what the minor differences are between both of these deck lists. So here's May's. Talk me through it.
Pretty similar. 3 preachers, only 2 negates. May has 2 duresses, an anoint, a blot out, 2 Gix's commands, a malicious eclipse, a shield with the apocalypse, a stab, and a Tishana's Tidebinder. So it looks like May, remember how I talked about mana efficiency? May actually has a couple of duresses and a stab. So potentially could want to go towards those, because those are pretty mana efficient plays. Duress can handle stuff like Kaido. There are a decent number of misses. This deck is, pretty creature heavy, so it could be a little risky to bring in something like Duress. But man, when you get to hit a Kaido or even just a kill spell, just that pure mana efficiency seems pretty important. So I would look towards maybe the Duresses, maybe the Stab, and potentially the Anoint. Again, it's tough trying to figure out what you want to cut. Maybe Tishana's Tiebinders can go. Maybe it's possible that you could shave an Enduring Curiosity, because those kind of line up awkwardly against counter spells. But it's this is a very tricky matchup to figure out how to sideboarding in, and it also kind of matters what your opponent does, because if your opponent maybe trims their curve down a little bit, and maybe you have to kind of match them. You want less top end. It's a very tricky matchup to sideboard in.
Stab, remind me, -2/-2 enchantment.
It's just disfigure. It's instant
Yeah.
black, -2/-2.
Just making sure I'm with that. Right. It looks like players are coming to the end of sideboarding and shuffling up. So we're going to head back down to the match. Connor playing for his tournament life here in the NRG Series Invitational. If picks up that 6th loss, will be out of today's tournament. So needs to win 2 back-to-back on the play. I think this is a one-lander. Would you keep a one-lander in this deck? Is that viable? Because Connor says no.
Not on the play. Maybe on the draw. Even then, it's like your one lander would probably have to have something like Spyglass, like maybe 1 or 2 Spyglasses and a 1 mana removal spell. But even then, it's like you do kind of need to hit all of your land drops.
That's how I know that, standards in a good place. That Spyglass is actually a real, genuine playable
It's
card in this
good.
format. Yeah, exactly. It's seen played for not just in this, but for multiple sort of seasons now or formats of standard. It's out there. But Connor's got himself a keep, so we're off to the races.
Yeah, his hand's kind of awkward though. I saw so I think he has a 2 mana creature and a Kaido, but his next 2 lands are Fountain Port, Soulstone, Sanctuary, and those 3 lands those do not ninjutsu Kaido on turn 3. So this is a bit of an awkward mana draw here for Connor.
Would you play a Mockingbird out just as a 1/1 fly, just to have a creature to be able to threaten ninjutsu, or are we going to try and get a bit more value out of that?
Depends on your hand. I think with this particular setup, you didn't need to do that because if May taps out on turn 2, you can just go end of turn, Drowner, tap the creature, untap. If you draw that colored source, then you can, go colored source, attack with Drowner, pick it up for Kaido. I think Connor didn't really need to do that
Whoa.
because he didn't have the colored source and May didn't tap out. So Connor chose not to cast a creature there because May was representing a kill spell.
There's that one copy of Stab at the sideboard, fired off straight away.
Oh god, and Connor drew a second Kaido. These colorless lands, they are powerful if the game goes long. Not where you want to be in the first couple of turns, though.
I think that's 5 Kaitos Connor's now seen over the space of these 2 games. Mastermind is going to come in 2 points of damage. Before damage, here comes a little bit of ninjutsu. No, it
Oh.
doesn't. And here's that interaction you spoke about. May gives a little shrug of the eyebrows, like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you got me there."
Yeah, that is a massive tempo exchange. So May spent 3 mana. She lost the creature on the battlefield, and she doesn't get to have the Kaido in play. She thankfully for her, she does have the cut down for the Tidebinder because Connor, if he drew a colored source, would have been able to deploy his own Kaido. Although if it's an untapped land, he can just tap out for Kaido, which is what he drew. So
Maybe
Connor's mana draw was a little bit awkward, but he's the one that gets to stick the first threat.
Maybe we can get that up on the screen so everybody can have a little look at this card. Full 4 copies in both deck lists here. Do you know the reason that this card came on my radar is because of Mason. Mason had I think a little bit of a rant online about this card, and I was like, okay, I need to check this out. You know what I mean? If the founder of Flage is not happy with it, I need to have a little look what this card can do. There it is for everybody at home to have a look at. We can make emblems with it. We can surveil. We can draw cards. And what was that? Tap type creature. Put 2
Two
stun
stun
counters on it.
counters.
That's a lot.
Yeah, no, Kaido is fantastic, and it kind of just does everything. Where it is a constant source of damage. It's a 3/4 on your turn, but if you plus it the turn you played, it's immediately a 4/5. It has hexproof on your turn, so it doesn't die to any traditional kill spells. No go for the throats. It's hard to kill. It has a lot of tough. It has a lot of loyalty. It's big. It taps creatures. It draws cards. It kind of just does everything.
So what sort of answers do these decks actually have to get this off the battlefield? Or once it sticks, it is just like, you've got a 1 or 2 outer.
Sometimes people play Shieldred's Edict. There is, I believe, both players have 1 blot out in the sideboard, so that is potentially because that's potentially a way to get it off the battlefield. But there's not a ton of answers. There, the no edicts for these players here.
Yeah, I was having a look to see if there's any edicts, and there isn't. Of course, both players also know that because it is an open deck list tournament. We're going to be doing a little bit of shenanigans. A lot of instant speed play you'll notice in both of these decks. We see the Drowner come in and put a counter on the Enduring. So that ain't going to be able to get in, ain't going to be able to draw any more cards from me, at least not this turn.
Yeah, and yeah, May has to cut down the Flood Pits Drowner because if she doesn't, Connor can just go untap with the Drowner, then use the Drowner to shuffle away that Curiosity. So May really on the back foot here. Connor is the one who is providing a ton of pressure. And we'll see if there is a way for her to kind of get back into this.
Looks like Mockingbird's going to come down. What's that? Do you know what that alternate art card is in hand here for Connor?
I believe it might be a second copy of Kaido. Yeah, it's a second copy of Kaido.
I didn't even know they made a fancy copy of Kaido like that. And there's me, and I'm going to know all these fancy different arts. But what I do know is that an Enduring Curiosity was found there from Connor. So getting in there with this Kaido, which is now what, a 5/6?
That sounds about right. Yeah, 2 emblems, originally a 3/4, so +2/+2.
Faye Mastermind's going to come in. Cutdown's going to deal with that.
Yeah, so I believe looks like Connor had hit May for 5, went to 0 the Kaido in second main phase. May went for a Mastermind. Connor answered that. So maybe Connor, I was going to say find land 4 to hold up the Curiosity, but it was a swamp. So again, still a little bit of mana issues, but still doing kind of fine with a Kaido on the battlefield. Just kind of keep ticking up and keep providing a bunch of pressure here. May already down to 11, so theoretically that Kaido is, almost a 2-turn clock.
Do you think we're getting a little bit too greedy with our 2-color decks? Playing a few of these colorless ones that makes it basically a 3-color deck. Are we getting too greedy in Standard? Are
No,
we no? Okay.
no, both of these decks only have 3 colorless lands. I mean, it definitely is awkward when you draw 2 of them, but with only 3 in the deck, I think on average you're, more likely to draw 1 per game than 2. Just kind of a little unfortunate here that Connor, started with those were for what 2 of his first 3 lands.
Well, Connor in the turn there was trying to make the sanctuary a free. May had the answer to it though. Went for go for the throat, get it off the battlefield. Does leave it with just 1 land up though. How can Connor kind of turn? Well, it's kind of behind. It feels like he's a little bit behind, but then he does have a character on the battlefield.
Well, I don't think so because worst case scenario for Connor, he can say hit for 5, use the Kaido to tap down the Curiosity for a couple of turns, which it looks like that's what he's doing. And that was kind of May's main source of pressure. That Curiosity, because it's not untapping for the next couple of turns, that, May really only has 1 power on the battlefield. She can't really threaten the Kaido in any meaningful way. I don't know if we can get I was going to say remove one of those counters. Here we go. So yeah, I think May is in kind of a tricky spot. Now she does have her own Kaido, I believe, but it's
Correct.
awkward because Kaido is not a creature on your opponent's turn. So May can't use her Kaido to tap down Connor's Kaido for a turn or two. So yeah, I think Connor is in a pretty commanding position. And you see May has to attack Connor instead of May has to attack Connor instead of Kaido because she needs to just keep finding cards.
We're going to stop the trigger here with the tie binder coming down. Now, if any cards caught me out more in not only the booth or playing it is tie binder, this card, every single time I get it wrong what it's done, just so everybody's aware at home and remind me, it is stopping the draw trigger now, so we won't be able to draw any more or we'll be able to draw moving forward.
Right. So the Mockingbird attacked Connor. That would trigger the Curiosity. The Tidebinder is going to target the stop the Curiosity from happening, and that'll also mean that if Connor ends up killing the Curiosity later on, it won't come back because it doesn't have the ability to come back. And I
That's
think
why
May
we've
is going to Tidebinder Connor's Tidebinder. Maybe. No.
no, a little bit ninjutsu here. So we're going to see the Kaito come in here for May, bringing the Mockingbird back to hand.
Yeah, and because she's at 6, she has to lock down that Tidebinder, but I believe she is dead if Connor finds an untapped land. No, we have a blocker. Okay. So now we can, even if Connor finds an untapped land, we can at least chump block either the Reef or the Kaido.
Draw step. We find a cut down. Is that exactly what we need to be able to get the blocker out the way?
Yeah, kill the blocker plus the Kaido. That should be 6 damage.
Yep,
Yeah.
go across. That's 6 damage. That means Connor's going to level this one up and take us into a game 3. There's a lot of game 3s you're going to find this weekend, ladies and gentlemen, because everybody is on top of their game. Every single win counts. Maybe you're not even going to count to get you into that top 8. You get an extra $50 for every win past a certain points. They're all playing for their share of $35,000. So let's get down and have a little look at the players. Let's get into their minds a little bit. We got them to fill out some, questionnaires before this tournament, and we gave them their nice little packs. You'll see them all wearing the same jackets. They get a nice little frame of the cards that got them here to this tournament. But on top of that, we were like, well, we need a little bit more. We need to find out a little bit about them and what's going on in their heads. So starting over on Connor's side, talk me through it.
Connor, 2024, played 15 main events, 5 top 8s with the best finish for 3rd. Just a very consistent player on the NRG series. Hometown Brighton, Michigan, and then our non-NRG Magic accomplishments: 1 SCG Open top 8, 6 MTGO Showcase top 8s. I know you're familiar with the MTGO Showcase program well, and then 40th place at Pro Tour Amsterdam. And Connor, favorite hobbies outside of Magic: triathlons and NBA basketball. I will say I personally am not I don't know a lot about basketball. I don't know if you do. Will
Michael Jordan played in it or something, I think. Once,
that
maybe.
sounds about right.
I think he was quite good. Shaquille O'Neal, that's the really tall guy that I see keep seeing buy kids bicycles on the socials. That's what I know about him. Triathlons, so I know a little bit about triathlons. To be fair, if Connor's doing triathlons, I'll tip my hat to him. That is a hard sport to be a part of. So it's a good mental break as well, I guess. Go away from Magic, getting in the zone, just go for a few long runs, etc. So pretty good. But it looks like players are ready, shuffled up, and firing off here. Game number 3, round number 10, the last standard round here in Swiss. Connor needs to win this, or others will be out of the tournament. May does have one loss to give, but does not want to give it. She wants to find herself into today's top 8 as just a land on both sides and a pass.
Yeah, and game two was a very good showcase of why Kaido is so good in this matchup.
Mhm.
Connor was the first one. May had the ability to go for a Kaido. She thought the coast was clear. Connor had the Tidebinder. Untap resolved his own, and I mean the game was not necessarily over, but it sure felt like it was pretty close to over. May it was just very hard for May to like kind of come back and keep up with the pressure that Kaido was able to provide. And we'll see if see if either of these players, but it's kind of a race to who Kaido is first almost.
Well, we went for a mastermind and a turn there. Connor had the answer, was tapped out, but May did not deploy anything while Connor was tapped out. Now going to deploy his third land. And does he want to try and deploy something, or do you want to hold up? You'll notice these decks are very instant speed, flash kind of orientated.
Yeah, and I did looking at Connor's hand, I think I did see a preacher. So it looks like those did come in for Connor here. So interesting to see. Okay. Well, May went for a Kaido. Connor has the counter. Does he have his own Kaido?
Well, I'm focused on that stab. That's still. I love that there's one copy of stab and we're seeing it. And yes, you are going to see Kaito coming down on the other side. That's huge here. Connor being able to the one to resolve the first Kaito.
Yeah, and I almost wonder if it's maybe a show of weakness from May's hand that she was willing to just jam the Kaido into the open mana that Connor had. Now, granted, Connor did already use a spell stutter, and players do have open deck lists. She knows that Connor only has 2 spell stutters, and you would imagine that the gates probably didn't come in, so you know that you're maybe a little bit safe from those. But yeah, Connor having the second spell stutter into the Kaido and also having the cut down for the Mastermind, everything is coming up Connor here.
I was about to say, having all the answers. Sees another copy of Kaito, sees a land in these top 2. Does want to keep him, does want to put him to the grave, does want to keep the land, doesn't want to keep the extra copy of Kaito for obvious reasons. That's going to be the land. And then, yeah, here we go. Here comes a preacher on the battlefield. Have a little bit more pressure. Nice, powerful 2/4 Death Toucher that's got a couple extra abilities depending on what your life total is. We'll talk through them in a second if that does get to be turned sideways. Another land for Main, just a pass of the turn.
Yeah, May's in a really rough spot here. Connor having the Kaido and the emblem, so that's going to be 4 power plus the Preacher. That's 6 with May at 16. Does have go for the throw for the Preacher, but remember that Kaido having hexproof is going to be basically unkillable on Connor's turn. The only way that she's going to be able to kill it is dealing with it, maybe essentially dealing damage to it in combat on her turn. And yeah, Connor's just going to be drawing extra cards off the Kaido and just, firing on all cylinders at this point.
That was a tie binder added to the hand. Yeah, this is going to be really hard in a resource battle matchup where, every single card counts. When Connor's been able to draw 2 a turn on the back foot here for me, something's got to go real right and real quickly, not just to pass the turn.
Yeah, and even here, they both players having 6 lands in play, but Connor having that Restless Reef and May doesn't. So even Connor even advantaged in that front as well.
This is what Connor's going to need. Because remember, needs to get to that 5-5 record. Needs to win out now to give the best possible chance of getting into today's top 8. And we are only 2 rounds after this of finding out who will be in it. Curiosity is going to come down. That's going to get a go for the throat. Tie binder the trigger for it so it doesn't come back.
Yeah, this is a rough spot here for May. It just looks like I don't think there was any mulligans this game, but it seems like the top of her deck has not been super kind to her. Drawing quite a few lands here. And here's a Kaido for May, but it's a little bit too late. And this is exactly what we saw in game 2, where Connor was just able to resolve the first Kaido. Countered May's Kaido, untapped, had his own, and just easily able to run away with the game from here. And you kind of see why these decks are playing 4 copies. You might not necessarily associate legend card like being a legendary card and wanting to play 4 copies, but you just want to have it every single game, and you want to have more than your opponent. And this is you're kind of seeing exactly why.
I wonder if going back to that turn 4 where she tapped out for the Kaito into Connor's open mana, if maybe we were meant to do a bit more, bluffing in that instant. If our hand was a little bit weak and we were able to slam this down, would Connor have slammed his on turn 4 if we had the 4 mana up on her side? Maybe that's how she might go back and watch this game and break it down a little bit, because she's really going to have an uphill battle in this instance to get this game turned around. Connor, more cards in hand, more creatures and resources on the battlefield, and of course, a higher life total. May passing the turn back.
Well, yeah, I think a big thing this game is, remember, going back to turn two, right? Connor used a spell stutter on base Fairy Mastermind. And again, we talked about these players have open deck lists. They know that there's only two copies of spell stutter in their respective deck lists. So I think May just weighed the options of, well, how likely is it Connor drew both spell stutters? Pretty unlikely. And that's just the way it broke down.
It's like the risk to reward. Like,
Right.
what's the reward if this resolves? How far ahead am I? Here comes a way. We're going to try and tap down that tie binder on the other side. Is there another cast spell? We can stop the trigger here. We can see a tie binder, and that is what is going to come down, stopping the trigger. Then the kill spell. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 8 points of damage. That is going to be Connor surviving, going to a 5-5 record, dropping May French down to a 5-5 record. So both players still live to possibly get into today's top 8. Such good back and forth magic there, Doom.
Yeah, I mean, that was just an absolute masterclass of just showing you why Kaido is the best card of these Dimir decks.
Yeah,
If you are the first person to play Kaido in the mirror match, it's really, really hard to lose. And, Connor just being able to, in both games, was able to be the first person to stick a Kaido and kind of just easily ran away with the game of it from there.
Yeah, maybe having hexproof was a little bit crazy, but doesn't matter. We've got more magic for all you beautiful people watching here today. We're going to go into our backup feature match, game number 3. And if it's the one I think it is, we potentially could be locking our first player into today's top 8. So let's get down to that matchup and see where we are at. Oh, we're going into straight to the point where we're drawing opening hands. Mono red aggro versus Gruul Prowess. I don't think this game's going to take very long, Doom.
No, I don't either. This is game 3. Theo at 7 wins. He's the only person to be at 7 wins so far in our event. He is playing for the top 8 here. Any win for Theo from now on up until the end of the next 3 rounds is going to be a lockup for top 8. And Theo playing the Gruul version of the red aggressive deck, and Bob playing mono red. Now, the differences here, the green cards. I want to pull up Theo's deck list just so I can double check here. I know that some versions play. Let me take a look. I'm going to get the deck list pulled up in a second.
You put it up while we kind of talk about this. Even with Theo at 7-2, even if he lost the last 3 rounds, there's still a chance could make it into the top 8 today with the tiebreakers, with being the leader so far this weekend. This is also the player that a lot of players said they wanted to dodge. They did not want to play against Theo. Really respecting, the power on how powerful he is as a aggro mage. And on this one is on the back foot, going to be dropping down to, I believe that's an extra 1, 2, 3, maybe around 16 life points. But over on the other side, we've got a Screaming Nemesis coming down, but it's going to be on defense here as a 3-3.
Yeah, so Theo is taking a look at the green cards just to give you an idea of what the differences are. Theo is playing 4 Innkeeper's Talent, 2 Snakeskin Veil, and the Questing Druids are in the sideboard. So that's kind of the big differences between these lists. But both players are sporting the full 4 copies, I believe. Yeah, 4 copies each of Screaming Nemesis. I don't know if we can get that card on the screen, but that card is an absolute menace in these red mirrors, because the most common way that you will be, or I guess the only way that you'll be removing creatures from the battlefield in these red matchups is either trading for it in combat or using a burn spell on it. And in either of those instances, you are never ahead in the exchange with Screaming Nemesis, because you're either trading 2 creatures for it or you're trading a burn spell and a creature for it. So it's really, really hard to get off the battlefield in these matchups.
Also, it's just a really cool, well-designed card, in my opinion. I think everything it does, even the name Screaming Nemesis, is a great part of this. And as you say, it's going to be great on defense, as there's no direct removal from either side here. It's all going to be damage-based. Here, we're going to go to combat. Theo's just going to push that Screaming Nemesis in front. Going, yeah, I'll block here. What you got?
And it looks like Bob has a Monstrous Rage. Now, there's an interesting thing where Bob can actually Monstrous Rage the Swift Spear. Yeah, I like this, because that's going to trigger prowess on the Challenger, right? So the Challenger is going to be a 3-3. The Swift Spear is going to be a 5-4, right? So Challenger trades for Nemesis. 3 damage can be targeted anywhere for Theo, but the Swift Spear is a 5-4. So, Bob is not going to lose 2 creatures in this exchange. So pretty heads up play here for Bob.
It's also not that I don't think it's going to be become relevant here, but also Bob now can't gain life, right, for the rest of the game. Is that
Yes. Bob is playing mono red, so there's no life gain here for Bob.
yeah? Like I don't think it's relevant, but we got to keep everything up to it. But just 2 lands left in hand here for Bob. It's kind of out of gas, and Theo's still at a relatively high life total in an aggro mirror where it's at 11 life. How can you turn this around? How can we drop Bob down from 16 and get on that front foot? Starting off with another mouse.
Yeah, and honestly, this game might actually come down to the creature lands, right? Bob has a Soulstone Sanctuary in play. Theo not currently. Theo has one copy of. Let me look at the list. Yeah, one copy of Restless Ridgeline for Theo versus 2 copies of Soulstone for Bob. So Bob a little bit slightly ahead in kind of the creature land heads up, but has a Manifold Mouse here that's going to provide a the copy of
Yeah,
the Offspring
Offspring.
token. Yep.
So this in the beginning of combat, you can target any of your mice. They're going to get double strike or trample. And this guy, it's kind of wasn't on people's radars to start off, but this plus a bunch of pump spells can be a big chunk of damage in one turn. As we can see, end of turn here, we're going to put a, ironically, 4 mana cost of spells into our exile zone. One of them being Screaming Nemesis, the other one being a Monstrous Rage.
Those are pretty good 2 cards, and this is sort of you get to highlight the reason why Theo is playing green. Questing Druid being just a straight up 2-for-1 in these kinds of matchups is massive, and this is kind of the advantage that you have when you are playing green versus the non-green version. Theo just getting a nice clean, I mean, effectively a 3-for-1. Theo got to use those 2 spells and still has the Questing Druid available for a later turn. So yeah, this is you're kind of seeing exactly why some of these players are choosing to play green in their red prowess decks.
And the mana's quite good as well at the minute in standard, right?
Yeah.
Like in this, you see, look, we got 4 mana, all of it can produce green, and it's pretty good for Theo moving forward. But how are we going to utilize this and turn this corner? Because any pump spell off the top here for Bob could just be lights out for Theo.
Yeah, so Theo doing some math here because, as you mentioned, the Manifold Mouse being able to give double strike trample. If a Monstrous Rage comes off the top for Bob, Theo has to make sure he has enough toughness to survive, right? So, for
Mhm.
example, if Bob does find a Monstrous Rage, you can attack with everything. If Theo puts Nemesis on, say, I guess you would put Nemesis on Swift Spear, Challenger on the Manifold Mouse. Rage on Manifold Mouse gets it to 4 power. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 minus 2 is 6. So that only has Theo taking 6, and you get the Nemesis trigger. So, yeah, I mean, Bob empty handed. Not sure if we really have an easy way out at this point.
Right, it's going to be deep in the tank thinking about it. Has the option as well, of course, making our land a 3/3. Don't know if that's going to come into it all, but it will be a mouse, so we could give it double strike and trample, and remember it has vigilance with it as well. So a way of being on defense as well as offense potentially. But in the tank, a lot on the line. Remember, Theo with a win here locks up our first competitor into the top 8. Bob at 5-4 records going to be a little bit harder to get into that top 8. We're not quite at lose and out magic, but doesn't want to be close to it. Wants to really start racking up these W's.
Yeah, looks like Bob going for a Soulstone Sanctuary here, which not the best against Nemesis. So if Bob attacks with the Soulstone, Theo,
Mm-hmm.
block with Nemesis, Theo could then choose to deal 3 damage to the Swift Spear. Maybe Bob just is okay with making this trade.
Right, he's coming in with a 3/3 vigilance, double strike, and trample.
Oh, the Soul Stone's a mouse. I
Yeah,
forgot about that. Oh, that is the first time I've seen this. Okay, this makes a lot more sense. Right, I forgot you could just target the Soul Stone with both of the manifolds.
but it still works the same
Ah,
way that you kind of said though, right? Because if you drop out the Scream Nemesis, the 3 damage still going to happen, and we
yeah,
can potentially target it again. So
because it would go first strike damage, deal 3 to Nemesis. You could then redirect the 3 to the Soul Stone, and you would still end up taking 0. But then it's only a
yeah,
1-for-1 trade, which is not as bad for Bob.
it's also taking all Bob's turn up as well. You remember we had to tap the 4 mana to make this into the 3/3. See a monstrous rage in hand here for Theo as well. Are you happy just taking the 6 here?
If you take 6, you go to 5. I think Theo's trying to line up to see if he has lethal next turn
Yeah.
guaranteed. So with Bob at 11, the Hardfire Hero is currently a 3/3. If you Monstrous Rage the Hardfire Hero, that would get it to 4/4 plus 2, so it'd be a 6/4. 6, assuming that doesn't get blocked, that would be 6 guaranteed coming through. Then Bob could chump block the Nemesis. That's only 7 damage. So yeah, looks like Theo is just content with taking that trade. And I like that too, because the Soulstone Sanctuary with double Manifold Mouse in play is certainly Bob's best threat. So just,
Oh, yeah.
you know, Theo, I think Theo realizes that maybe he's slightly ahead on the battlefield and just wants to make sure that he, you know, takes these efficient and good trades while he can before Bob has the ability to make, because say Bob makes that attack next turn with mana untapped, Theo then has to think
Oh,
about
yeah.
something like Monstrous Rage.
It's a lot more scary. And we're going to fire off with a Monstrous Rage here. We're going to let exile that top card and have a little look at it. So a little bit of a dig in here, Theo. Give himself the best options. Another Screaming Nemesis. Really good at drawing that card in
Yeah,
this
look at the
matchup.
sigh from Bob. Bob just shaking the head. He nothing but smile here. That's Screaming Nemesis number 3, right?
So yeah, number 3 so far in this matchup. Remember, we've got the Question Druid as well on an adventure. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 damage, 10, 11, 12. Now the Screaming Nemesis comes down. Gonna get in there with the Challenger. So this is gonna be what, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is 6 damage. So setting up to potentially try and win over 2 turns here. Maybe not. Kind of doing a little bit of the math.
And with Trample, Bob doesn't really have any good blocks. I mean, you could soak up 3 damage from the Swift Spear, but I mean, I couldn't quite get a good look at what Bob drew last turn. But maybe if Bob drew something like Monstrous Rage and draws another Monstrous Rage, maybe that's enough. Where you can go double strike on both of the mice, and then Rage would be +5. That's 6 times 2 is 12.
Definitely one Monstrous Rage in hand at least.
Okay, that's something.
What's the other one? The other one might be the that lands that gives the target creature +1/+0 and haste. I think maybe sandbagging that for any potential mice we could have drawn for the turn.
It looks like Bob has no copies of that card. No Might of the Meeks. Yeah, we got
definitely not that card then.
The other spells that Bob looking to draw here: 4 Burst Lightning, 4 Monstrous Rage, 2 Obliterating Bolt wouldn't be the worst here. 2 Torch the Tower, 2 Witchstalker Frenzy. Those are what Bob is looking to draw here. I mean, obviously, would rather have 2 Rages, but
oh, yeah, I'm trying to work out what that extra card was from the art, but we'll find out nonetheless. Bob in the tank.
Oh, the Village. Okay, so Village plus Rage.
Yeah, that's
so
what I said.
Oh, I thought you meant the spell that gives +1/+1. You draw a card. I thought that's what you meant.
Village.
Okay.
Look at me. I'm on the ball. Come on, dude.
I
Come on.
gotcha.
We've got this. Right. We're going for this feels like just outswing. Hope Theo does some sort of bad blocks and you're able to sneak this game out. This is game 3. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, and if Theo wins this, we'll be the first player in our top 8 today.
Okay, so I assume that Theo is putting the Heartfire, or do you know which one that Bob motioned to pump? Was it the token or the original?
Or they could just target the other one. Oh, you mean I think it's the original one. It's the one that got the +1/+0.
Okay. I guess it doesn't matter because they're both 3/3s on defense, so the math doesn't change. So let's say 1, 2, because it's 2 power plus 3 from the rage. That's 5. 5 times 2 is 10. 10 minus 3 is 7. Will 7 plus 3, that's only 10 damage. That has Theo going to 1.
That is some quick math there by our expert Devin Donnelly. Tune in next week for more math tips. But no,
I believe.
11.
I did my math right.
I think your math checks out, especially in this instance. So that means Theo will go down to 1. 1 is not nothing, which means on the crackback, would Theo have lethal to be able to win this game?
I believe so, because Bob would also end up taking 2 from the combat because the Nemesis would get hit twice. So Bob would go to 9. The hero would die. Bob would go to 6. And then you have the Nemesis plus the Challenger. That is 6 damage. So Bob may actually have to rage. Okay, unless I did my math wrong.
Do we have to rage the Nemesis here just to get it off the battlefield?
Yeah. But then you also you end up in spots where, so if you rage the Manifold Mouse, you first strike down the Nemesis, then the Nemesis can shoot the Manifold Mouse. Yeah, I think Bob has decided that.
We're getting a little fun. Yeah, Theo is going to lock it up. He's going to be our first player into the NRG Series Invitational. So we will be seeing more from that gentleman later on. And it's going to get spicy later on, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you, once we get into that top 8 and we start talking about how it's going to be working, we've got some spice. And if you're a fan of standard, pioneer, and modern, this is the channel you want to be on. I'm being told we're going to get an interview with Theo, and he's already sat down ready to go. So let's move straight down to it. Theo, Will, and Devon in the booth. First off, congratulations on being the first player into today's top 8. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great, thanks. Yeah, I mean, a lot of things went right. I got really lucky and, avoided
Well,
making any like pretty horrible errors. So yeah,
that's the main thing, right? Don't
yeah.
make any errors. You're gonna find yourself in the top 8.
Mhm.
Yeah. So again, Theo, congratulations. As far as the standard deck list, you decided to play the Gruul deck, and talk to me about that last match. I saw we only got to see that third game there, but I saw the look on Bob's face when you flipped that third screaming nemesis was maybe not the look of somebody who's very happy.
Oh yeah. I'm sure Bob was very sad to see that. Yeah. So I decided to play Gruul. It's the deck I've been winning with the most, and I really wanted to play 4 Innkeeper's Talent because I thought it was like the best card against Dimir. As far as like the mono red matchup goes, I think you're slightly behind. Because Innkeeper's Talent isn't great there. Your mana is a little less clean than the mono red deck, but yeah, I got pretty lucky. Flipped my Nemesis off Heartfire Hero, and yeah.
Sometimes you just need that extra bit of luck, though, right? You get that extra bit of luck, gets you across the line. So we're playing standard, pioneer, and modern this weekend. Which format have you enjoyed the most? Which format one would you wish you get to play every round in the top 8?
Yeah, so personally, I enjoy Standard the most. The games of Standard have been really fun and decision intensive. Playing this red deck has been a lot more fun than I thought it would be. And yeah, I'm not sure if I have any matchups that I would really hate to play with a Gruul deck. So
That's
Good
good.
position to be in.
Yeah.
Well, the other important thing is now that you're locked up for top 8, you get a little bit of a break, Theo. So, what are you what are you going to spend the next couple of hours on doing? You get some time to maybe practice a little bit, maybe just take a little bit of take a little bit of time off.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna take some time off. I think like whatever prep I do magic wise isn't really gonna outweigh like taking a nap before,
That's
playing
fair.
more magic. So yeah,
And
that's the
right, one
plan.
last question before we let you get off to your nap. A lot of players this weekend were asked, like, who do they want to dodge? Your name came up the most. Who do you want to dodge in that top 8?
Um, yeah, I can't really think of anyone. So
I'm
Perfect
good against
answer.
all of them, Will. It doesn't matter.
Perfect
Line them up.
answer.
I'll knock them down. All right, Theo, we're going to let you get off and, enjoy getting into today's topic. So, again, congratulations yet again. We're going to come back to the booth where we're going to sign off for a real quick turnaround. And we're going to come back with round number 11, which, remember, is now standard is done. We're going into Pioneer for the next round. So, I'm Will. That's Devon. We'll see you after this break.